All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Bored as Hell podcast. I'm Adam McDonald with Big Shiny Robot.
And I am Andy Wilson, aka Citizen Bot, also a big shiny robot.
And due to the fact that our screening reps up here in Salt Lake City were scared to death of the Sundance Film Festival, they didn't screen anything for us all week long. So Andy he got to jump on us. He's going to talk about two movies that he saw. And then at the end, I'm going to just quickly follow up with the last three movies I got to see at the Sundance Film Festival, and we'll leave it from there. So, Andy, what did you get to see that I didn't?
Well, luckily for you, we don't have Sundance going on. We get the similar thing when South by Southwest rolls through in a couple of months. I'll have the same problem. But we got to see Kung Fu Panda 3 and The Finest Hours. I could go like worst to first, but really they're both about the same. So let's talk about the Panda movie first.
Pandas! Yay, Jack Black!
Yay, Jack Black. For those who are fans of the first two films,
which I am.
I am. I think those are great movies. This is a good sequel, maybe not quite as good as those first two, but it's still a solid film. All of the cast returns, although in varying degrees. I think Jack Black and David Cross maybe have like one line apiece, and barely any like Angelina Jolie. But on the upside, we get a lot more of two new characters. We have Bryan Cranston, who shows up as Poe's long-lost dad. And he suddenly shows up in Poe's village, and he's like, oh yeah, we're a whole tribe of pandas, and guess what? We have secret magic called chi, and you can learn about it.
In Japan.
Or ki. Yeah. So Poe decides that he needs to learn this ancient magic, and at the same time, J.K. Simmons is an undead master from the spirit realm who has managed to break through into our realm and has a grudge against said pandas. So he's going to go after them and eliminate the pandas and steal their power of chi unless he can be stopped.
All the while looking for pictures of Spider-Man.
He's a menace, I tell you.
Box of meat.
So the voice acting by both of those guys is excellent, and really they are the two stars here. I mean, Jack Black does a great job. He's got obviously the central story arc, but those two as supporting characters do really well. You end up with this kind of great family dynamic where Poe's like, oh, this is my real dad, and then his adopted father is like, no, I'm your dad. And so he's trying to like figure out, who am I? Which is that, kind of great Zen question. So again, borrowing from the Kung Fu movies and tropes that Kung Fu Panda has always borrowed from so well, it becomes somewhat of a journey of discovery for Poe. But I do have some problems with the script. I don't know, Adam, if you remember an old episode of the show News Radio where they find out that Jimmy James' autobiography is a big hit in Japan. And so what they do is they retranslate the Japanese version back into English to try and get it to sell here, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. This script kind of feels that way. Like maybe they were trying for too much simplicity, too much parsimony, and they missed out on really talking about, what it is that's going on. So the script was fine.
So they kind of were playing to like the lowest common denominator as far as what was the audience was expecting and not what they could have had.
Yeah, well, and let's remember that the lowest common denominator here are like 5-year-olds. So I understand, not overcomplicating the script, but it feels like they could have maybe done a little bit better of a job, and it sometimes felt just oversimplified and not as good as it could have been. That's really my only complaint with the film, which otherwise the animation on this is absolutely gorgeous. Go and see this on the biggest screen that you can. See it in 3D, and just the opening scene
Mhm.
of the undead evil master trying to break out and fighting his way out is just gorgeous, just absolutely amazing as you see these giant asteroids and rocks hurtling towards you, and it's beautiful, and it's a lot of fun. So this is a movie that if you take your kids to, you're going to be okay at. It's not Citizen Kane, but and it's not even Kung Fu Panda 2 or the original Kung Fu Panda, but it's still pretty good. You'll have a good time. So,
well, it does look like everyone went out and watched it. It's destroying the box office. So,
yeah, well, as it probably deserves to. I mean, it's about time we had another kids movie, so that works for people. But if you're a fan of the franchise, you're going to go see it. If you're not, I don't know if this is the best place to go and pick it up in the middle. Go check out the first two. But in the meantime, there you go.
Cool. So tell us about one for the adults now.
For the adults, well, we have a movie about sailors made by Disney, so it ends up being about the cleanest mouth sailors I've ever heard in my life. This movie is only barely PG-13. I think it's rated PG-13. You know how they say exactly what's in the film, like intense sequences of graphic nudity or whatever. This is like
right, yeah.
This is like intense peril or something like that.
No, it's much too perilous.
there's nothing really in this movie. For a movie about sailors, yeah, they certainly don't use any salty language. This is the true story, though, of the most successful Coast Guard small boat rescue ever. In 1952, a couple of oil tankers are hit in this massive blizzard off the coast of New England, and they end up getting split right in half. Yeah, literally right in half.
Oh, wow.
So they don't even know about this second one. And so most everyone is off dealing with the first ship. And then suddenly they realize, oh, there's this second one 5 miles off the coast, and no one's coming for them. Enter Chris Pine and his crew, and they're going to be basically the only ones who could go out and attempt a rescue. This is essentially a suicide mission, and they're not expected to make it back. If you think about kind of the physics of this storm, they are in a harbor protected by a sandbar, and then they've got raging seas outside of them. So if you think about it, and you've got a ton of water that's just raging, and it goes up against a fixed point in surface, that's going to make giant cresting waves coming over this sandbar. And they're like, yeah, dude, you're never even going to get out of the harbor to be able to attempt this rescue. And he's like, yeah, we're going to try it anyway. And so if you've ever been surfing or boogie boarding and you're going up against these big waves, you know that when they start cresting, the only thing you can do is either get up over them or go underneath them. So guess what? In this tiny little 30-foot boat, what are they doing? Sometimes they're going right through these giant 30, 40-foot waves.
Yeah.
It's absolutely harrowing. And then you realize, oh my gosh, how are they even going to get back? Because there are other things that complicate the rescue. Then you have a second storyline happening of everybody that's on the boat. And I think Chris Pine did a great job, but even better is Casey Affleck, who is playing the engineer on the ship. and he's trying to keep this half a boat afloat as they're taking on water.
Does it involve running from one side of the boat to the other?
No, it does not.
Oh, damn it.
It involves a lot more engineering and just really, really smart thinking. And it's essentially a race against the clock because they're like, okay, well, this much water is coming in. We have the pumps running. Once the water gets to this point, it's going to shut off the pumps, and then it's going to start taking on even more water. How are we going to stay afloat long enough for someone to come and get us? Oh, and there's no radio. They have no captain or anyone because all of those people were at the front of the boat. And so they're kind of in a mutiny type situation, and he's got to take control and keep them all alive. Really amazing. Affleck does a great job. I may be in the minority here, but Casey has always been my more favorite Affleck. I've always loved it. I mean, I like Ben Affleck. I'm a fan, but I've always really loved Casey Affleck.
Well, Casey's done, you could say his percentage of wins versus losses as far as good movies go do seem to outweigh Ben's. Now, that's Ben's whole career because lately he's been doing amazing stuff. So
yeah, well, Casey, I think probably never felt pressured into doing Bounce or Reindeer Games. So
or Gigli.
Or Gigli. He can just let those slide by and pick and choose what.
He also didn't have to try to compete with Matt Damon either. So
exactly. So, but everybody does a great job with this up until about the last 10 minutes. And then this movie grinds to a screeching halt as it becomes the most overwrought, cheesy, just ugh. I mean, I almost got really upset at this movie because it was doing just fine up until then. Mm-hmm. They tried to shoehorn a romantic subplot between Chris Pine and Holliday Granger, and she's the girl back on shore who's gonna have to be waiting for him. And
were they playing Celine Dion?
No, they weren't.
Damn it!
But yeah, but it just went completely off the rails at the very end for me. And other than that, it was just fine. But both of these movies, I'm at a 7 out of 10.
Nice.
This is good. It's fine. Harrowing, and really makes you appreciate what actually happened out there. I mean, a little bit of the drama is taken away because you know that this is a true story, and they wouldn't be celebrating it if everybody died.
Well, look at Titanic.
Okay, I guess that's true. Maybe that is a spoiler, but
now you know where my Celine joke was coming from.
Yeah, well, they've been marketing this as like the Coast Guard's most successful rescue ever. So
and any trip to Google or Wikipedia will tell you what actually happened. So
yeah, so and it's really cool. Stay through the credits because you actually get to see photos of all of the people who were the actual people who did this. It's not so long in the past that they weren't able to get pictures of these guys in the newspapers for their heroic efforts. So great job. It feels very Disney-esque for people who have seen recently their string of heartfelt sports movies. This is right in the same vein. Actually, done by the same director who did $1 Million Arm a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a kind of a surprise hit, too, because I have no interest in baseball movies, but from what I understood, that one was pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's pretty good. And, and he also made Lars and the Real Girl, which was an interesting arty movie. So
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, well made, well put together, and yeah, but it's very Disney-fied, as I said. So if it offends you that the sailors aren't swearing, this might not be your movie because the sailors don't swear.
And if you're someone who's going to get offended by someone not swearing, you're probably someone who shouldn't be listening to people swear in the first place.
Well, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Anyway, that's what's coming out in the theaters for the rest of the country. Adam, what have you seen at Sundance?
So I've tried to catch as much as possible. I mean, the first weekend is kind of your go all out, see what you can, and then unfortunately work has to come back and slap you in the face. So the three I want to bring up were two documentaries and also a found footage film. And how much do I love found footage films, Andy?
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah. I'm not a fan, but this one actually was pretty fun and pulled it off. The one kind of interesting documentary was the Werner Herzog Lo and Behold, Reveries of the Connected World. And it was a 10-part documentary about the history of the internet, where we came from, what's going on now, and then kind of where we're going, what the future is supposed to look like. Very, very interesting. It was, as someone who has been on the internet for way longer than I care to admit, let's just say that You've Got Mail was a big thing when I was a kid. It was really interesting to go back through the halls of UCLA, and they actually have the room preserved exactly the way it was when they first hooked up the ARPANET, which was what the beginning of the internet was between them and I forget what other university it was. But they actually had both scientists on the phone talking to each other, so as they were typing, they could verify what the other was saying. And the reason why it's actually called Lo and Behold was because the very, very first thing ever sent over the internet was the engineer was trying to type login, and when he did that, it crashed, and the only thing that transmitted was low. So that's kind of where he got the name for it. So it was fun seeing all that stuff. The problem with this documentary, though, is there's no unifying theme of kind of where he wants to take it. It really jumps around a lot. So chapter 1 was, where we've been, like the beginning. Chapter 2 was the next step. Then it talked about how everyone who was on the internet back then was in a phone book. And then I think chapter 3 was the dark side of the internet, and it tells this rather harrowing tale of a family whose daughter died in a car accident, and somehow someone was at the scene and got pictures of her corpse pretty much in the car and started sending it to her family and harassing them and just doing all these horrible things, and showing that the internet, there's bad parts out there. There are people who do use it for evil. But then chapter 4 is suddenly about people who are allergic to electromagnetic pulses and have to live in these. There's a special camp that's outside of this observatory where there's no internet, no cell towers. It's a legitimate dead zone because it's picking up radio signals from space. And they go there because they break out and they're allergic and, whatever. And then the next step's about robots. And then it goes into people addicted to the internet, and finally ends up in the future with where the internet's going. We'd be able to tweet from our brains, which all I could think about was the South Park where, Cartman was tweeting from his brain. And I really can't say the name of it because it was a naughty word. So yeah, it was fascinating, interesting, even though it's hard to listen to Werner Herzog talk for long periods of time because, as we mentioned earlier, Andy, you said it's been parodied so much.
Well, and he's almost started self-parodying so much too. Now we have the very overwrought Werner Herzog telling us exactly how important this thing was. And it's great. It's great, and I could listen to it, but I just start laughing. And
there's also the fact that to this day I'll always remember that Hugo Weaving for Captain America was doing his best Werner Herzog for the Red Skull. So that kind of, the whole time he's talking, it's kind of like trying to go back and watching a movie with James Mason after you've seen Eddie Izzard do the James Mason impersonation. Like it gets stuck in your head. Yep. But overall, interesting. Lots of cool stuff there. He interviews Elon Musk and talks about what he's doing and wanting to go to Mars. And he goes to this college where they've built these soccer-playing robots. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff there. There just isn't a cohesive narrative that's threading through that all good documentaries should have. So I'm at a 7. It was fun to watch. If it comes around, which I'm sure HBO probably is going to go buy them all up again like they always do. Definitely something to check out, but it's definitely not his best. So yeah, Lo and Behold was that. And then the other one, and this one, it's hard to talk about. I wanted to see it because it was a very sad and unfortunate moment in U.S. history, but also, it deserves being talked about. It's Newtown, which is the documentary about the Sandy Hook shootings from a couple years ago. And all I can say is it was very well done. It was very interesting. It's chronicling the lives of the families of both families who had kids who unfortunately lost their lives, were murdered. Let's not beat around the bush. Was murdered by a crazy terrorist, and also people who maybe their kids were best friends with them and their kids survived. And it just kind of follows them after what's going on, shows how some of them, what they're doing to kind of keep their sanity and move on with their lives. Some became political activists and moved into kind of the gun control realm. Other people just went about and did what they could. It's, again, really well done. It was excellent. It was very, very difficult to watch because there's a lot of home movies of these kids, these innocent little kids who were, gunned down by an asshole, and it was hard to watch. But in the end, it does tell a really good story, and I don't think it's getting the recognition it deserves. So if you can stomach it and you want to get upset about, I guess you could say what's the word I'm looking for? Justified anger over an issue that should be brought about more and talked about instead of just being swept under the rug or relegated to the right or the left of the political spectrum. This one has it in spades, and if you can get through without crying, then you don't have a soul, and you shouldn't be my friend. But no, it was really good. I'm at a 9, just because it's very timely. It's something that I think everyone should see, and again, hopefully something that I'm sure we'll pick up on HBO. Which I'm sure in the next couple months will probably pop up on HBO. So, anyways, on that positive note, I do want to end with a movie that actually did surprise me, which was Operation Avalanche. As I mentioned earlier, it's a found footage film, which I wasn't expecting going in. I didn't kind of know what it was about. I just heard that it takes place during the space race of the late 60s, where the U.S. is trying to beat the Soviets to the moon. So the CIA is hiring these graduates from Harvard to come and be like do all their film work and stuff. Well, they begin to believe that NASA has a Russian mole in it that's sending information to the Soviets to get them to the moon before we did. And because JFK promised we'd be to the moon before the 70s, that would be a big slap in the face from the Soviets, and it would, it would besmirch our pride, our national pride. So they send these CIA agents, these young, college students, to NASA under the guise that they're filming a documentary about the space race. Well, in the meantime, their real goal is to find the mole in NASA. Well, as they're trying to film stuff and figure things out, they come to realize that there's no way in hell we'll ever make to the moon before 1970. And we have to, because that's what JFK promised. So they set, and this is where the movie totally changes and becomes almost a different film, which you don't expect. They set about to film and fake the moon landing. And they do this by getting things set up. They have this money coming from the CIA. They actually go and visit Stanley Kubrick on set of doing 2001: Space Odyssey, and they actually interspersed and did green screen effects with old footage interviews of Stanley Kubrick to put him in the shot. And basically, they're doing their best to pull off the fact that, hey, we're going to fake this. Everyone's going to think it's real. And then one by one, they start getting threatened and possibly being hunted because no one else can ever learn the fact that we faked this moon landing. So they did film it found footage style because it was to make sense they're doing a documentary. And the interesting thing is that the director came on stage afterwards and explained how they did it. They actually did somewhat guerrilla filmmaking. They actually went and toured NASA, and you can go to ground control, mission control, and see how it was set up back in the 1969 Apollo missions. And they had full consent of what was going on. So they said, hey, can you give us 20 minutes? We're going to film a scene. And they said, yeah, sure, you're good. And I guess while they're doing it, like a tour group came by in the upper room, we're like taking pictures at them. So if you ever watch the movie when they're in mission control, you can see scenes where like their flashes are going off, and it's these tourists taking pictures of them. But it's a lot of fun. It's really well done. It was a found footage film that actually worked, which is kind of few and far between. So yeah, it was a great movie. Hopefully it'll come out. If it doesn't, I'm sure some indie people will pick it up. But yeah, Operation Avalanche, about 7.58 right now. So.
Well, is this the one with Simon Pegg and Ron Perlman?
No, this is 100% indie. Actually, the director is the main character. It's his friends. Like Matt Johnson is the director and the main guy. Owen Williams is his best friend in the movie. And no, so it's nobody. So like I've never heard of these people. I guess they're filming some show for was it MTV or something where it's a TV series, and one of their episodes is called "We Sneak a Film into Sundance." And so the joke was that they actually did put a movie in Sundance, but they're making a joke out of it for their TV show. So when that debuts on whatever channel it is, I'll keep an eye out because they were filming us in the crowd. So
that's hilarious. Our friend Brian Young and I have a mutual friend who did a very similar film at Sundance where he was doing a very meta approach to it about all of the celebrities and everything.
I think either he wrote about that or there's like maybe it was just a short film he made, but I remember seeing something, and this sounds really familiar.
Okay.
I'll have to talk to you about it after.
Abby Singer.
Abby Singer, yes. I know what you're talking about.
That's it? Oh, no way. Yeah. So my old high school buddy, Ryan Williams. Hey, Ryan. How's it going? So, cool. And then you saw one other documentary?
Which one was that?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Oh, no, it was just those ones. That was it. And then the one, the Norman Lear one we talked about last week.
Oh,
but that was it.
Okay, and for the record, I went and started looking who's picked up what. Amazon and Netflix have been picking up the most films, although the only one that we've talked about here that's going to show up is the Norman Lear movie, which will come to Netflix. So there we've got that, but I wanted to talk really, really briefly. I spent 2 minutes kind of popping off about the racism of Hollywood and 50 Shades of Black and how the film market is very segregated. And we turn around and this week have the highest deal ever from Sundance going to Birth of a Nation. Mm-hmm. That's a movie I really want to see, and it sounds like thanks to Fox Searchlight, we will be seeing that very, very soon. That's really cool. I don't know if that is a response to the all of the allegations and real problems of racism in Hollywood, or if this is just finally this is a moment where Black artists and Black directors are finally being recognized for their work and getting that out there. So I don't know.
Again, this was one that just didn't fit into the time I had to go see it. It was, I think it was opening day or the Tuesday, a day I couldn't go up to Park City and see it. But I do know that the friends I would know who saw it, and then one of my customers who I talk to all the time has his wife does a big thing for Sundance, and I guess she went and saw it with some friends, and they gave it a standing ovation. So, I've heard really amazing good things about it.
Yep, it won all of the audience awards, or maybe not just audience awards.
It won audience, and it was the grand jury award too.
Yeah, so.
And the SAG Awards came out too, and the SAG Awards definitely lots of people of color. Queen Latifah won Best Female Actor in a Television Movie or Series. Idris Elba, same thing, male actor. Uzo Aduba from Orange is the New Black. Viola Davis. So not quite as many for Hollywood that I've seen so far, because Idris Elba was for Beasts of No Nation.
Yep.
So there definitely is kind of actually, let's talk about this for a second. So have you read up on the new rules regarding membership to the Academy?
I have, and I think that's good. But and even before we get into this, I want to point out, and I think this is very important, how streaming and streaming first and streaming only audiences are helping to open some of these things up. Orange is the New Black and Beasts of No Nation are streaming only, streaming first properties. And I think that Netflix and Amazon having as large of audiences as they do, they're able to pick these up, and they don't have to worry about calling it a niche audience. They don't have to worry about, well, we're only going to put this into theaters in Atlanta, Birmingham, Chicago, and LA. Just everybody gets it. And because everybody gets it, then everybody gets to see it. And I think that's incredibly important. And when we talked about Beasts of No Nation, you know, I brought that up, how incredibly impressive Idris Elba was, but that the movie was, I mean, incredibly depressing. I think I said, the difference is whether you want to go see it in a theater or at home is whether you want to cry in a theater or cry in your living room. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, but amazing film. So back to the SAG Awards though, and the new rules. I think that's really good. They're opening it up, and they're going to have more people on there. The real question is, who is going to be in those new slots? And you don't want it to be just like tokenism and, oh, well, we're going to get an Asian guy, we're going to get a Latina, and we're going to get a black guy, and then we're going to call it good, diversity achieved, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And we're going to pretend it's all fine and dandy. Diversity and equity and inclusion is an ongoing process that everybody has to look at themselves and like try and make space and try and make accounting for it. And unfortunately, that's going to upset a lot of people who are used to being the only ones at the table, who generally speaking are, you know, heterosexual white males, white Christian males. And some of those people need to move over and make way for more diverse voices, because their experience is not everyone's experience. And I want to see more diverse films, and I want to see Orange is the New Black. I want to see Beasts of No Nation. I want to see Birth of a Nation. Bring all of it on.
Cool. So that's it for this week. Hopefully next week we'll be back to our normal paces, and we'll have some new stuff to talk for you. The two big ones that I saw on the list were Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and Hail Caesar, which is the new Coen Brothers movie. So
yay!
Yes, and I was so excited. It's like, your screening's on Tuesday. I'm like, yes, our screening's on Tuesday. And at the same night, I have tickets to go see The Producers. So I'm seeing The Producers on Tuesday, but I will be seeing this with civilians on my spare time on Friday. And then the week after is the long-awaited and hopefully amazing Deadpool, which I may or may not have seen by the time we record next time. So
I may or may not have seen it, but I'm so excited for Hail Caesar.
Yes.
I love a good Coen Brothers movie, and we haven't had a wacky madcap type Coen Brothers movie in a while. And teaming back up with George Clooney and Josh Brolin, like this just can't get any better. I can't wait.
Yeah, so it's the one I've been excited for. I think, God, I saw the trailer, I want to say back like in October maybe. I think I made it in front of a screener back then. I was like, what is this wonderful looking movie? And it's like Coen Brothers. I'm like, yes.
Yep.
So that's when I will be more than happy to put good money down to go pay and see on Friday. So
indeed.
All right, everyone, have a good week. Thanks for sticking around with us. And hail Satan, and have a lovely afternoon.